Good morning. Thank you for joining Hobby Hi-Fi. This is take two. What I'm going to do, I just went over some speaker cable changes and upgrades and hookups and whatnot. But I didn't get to some of the details that I wanted to, so I'm going to do a take two here. And I was able to prop this phone up since I've been doing all my videos here on a Samsung Galaxy S9. I'm gonna have to use the front-facing camera on this so that I can see what I'm recording here, which is probably not going to be quite as high quality as the rear-facing camera, but I think this should be fine. So anyway, I wanted to go over the spring. These are the spring type cable speaker terminals, spring clips, and I should be zoomed in a little bit, but up top here above, and this is just a little plastic piece that sets in, but these are your spring loaded I don't know, thumb tabs, I guess you can call them, and these come in various iterations. You know, these are old 90s and they're pretty solid, so not a bad situation to deal with, except for that the holes above are a little bit small. So that's why I originally decided that on speakers like these that I would use these pin type, whether they're straight or bent. The bent, I think, will hang a little easier. That angle is going to offer you a little strain relief. So I do like these because of the slight bend in the cable, in the pin itself. So as you notice, you have, we're just going to be a little redundant here, but for beginners, who knows, this we might as well go through as much detail as we can, and this probably will be a much shorter video than the last one anyway. But always look for your positive and negative, just like when you're dealing with your car battery, or any battery for that matter. You always want to maintain your polarity by keeping your positives and negatives coherent. So these cables here, what they've done is they've color coded these. Back in the days, you can see they used to use red and black a lot, like car batteries do. But a lot of speaker manufacturers will decide to use a different color for their positive. And this one, these cables made by Cadence, I think, some off-brand that I've never really heard of. But they are using a blue for their positive, and so I always try to, this is a nice, easy visual, quick visual check to just say, okay, if you've got black, and black is always negative. So these pins fit nicely in there, but like I said, it is kind of hard to do it with one hand, so you almost have to, and I'm standing in front of the speaker, so I definitely, this is, your typical reach around situation where you can't always see the back, and some of these speakers are much larger than these. So it can be not as easy as it should be, and so I always try to make things easier on myself. But in this case, it's still not as easy as it could be because it's a spring clip, and you do need two hands. So what you need to do, reach in and pull that spring down, and then find the hole. And if it's dark, this becomes more complicated, and then you've got a little metal clip, and then you've got some little variegations on the wire itself that's supposed to help grip. And so there you've got a nice tight, and you need to do the same thing. Now, if you're handy, you've done this a million times, sometimes you can take one finger, pull down on that spring, and with the other two fingers, if you're a contortionist, you can do it with one hand, but you see, it can be quite difficult. So anyway, who has two hands free all the time? So you have to use two hands, and then once you get them as tight as you're happy with, and they're not able to touch, and these are actually done pretty well, because even if they swing, they're probably not going to swing into each other and short out, because if you do touch these two together, your amplifier is going to say, hey, either blow a fuse, trip the protection circuitry, or other more serious problems. So always keep these from touching once your power is turned on. So anyway, this is the old way, and was a pretty good way for dealing with spring clips. There's no real good way, to be honest with you. And as I said, the typical way of dealing with that back in the day was bare wire, and then you don't have any ability to use banana clips, although a lot of times banana clips, banana plugs will fit in those holes. Now I think this one was a pretty tight fit. It certainly wasn't optimal. It wasn't designed to be used that way, but you certainly can do that if your banana plugs are a little on the smaller side. You might get lucky and be able to use those even with your spring clip terminals. So now that we've upgraded our wire to our new concepts, larger gauge, you can see, as I was talking about earlier, this cable is 100% copper, and if we can get a good focus on this, seems to be harder to do than I ever thought it was. But anyway, very shiny and nice looking copper, and I like it. So when you're dealing with speaker wire in general, you still want to be able to identify a positive and negative on this easily. And as I first looked at this, I didn't see any identifying marks. And so I thought, oh, am I going to have to put a tape or a little dot of paint, or, and then I looked further down the cable and I see writing. Okay. So your new concepts logo is down on one side only. And so I have agreed long ago that at all times, the side of the speaker that has writing is going to be positive. So in my head, I always know I've decided that writing means positive. So that's something that will help you going down the road to always know and have some sort of a key to be able to keep your polarity correct. And so what I do is I sort of just eyeball it and I follow it up and I say, okay, there's my positive. And so here is where I wanted to show you where it gets difficult. Now, what I normally do with a pair of speaker cables that have been freshly cut, and we've got a nice shiny copper, oxygen-free copper, high grade, soft and very malleable and nice. I spin it a little bit and make it as tight as I can, which not always recommended, because you don't want to really introduce a whole lot of grease, which our hands typically are probably more full of oils than we think that they are. You ever take a look at your cell phone after you just wiped it off, and then 5 minutes later you see a bunch of fingerprints? It's pretty hard to keep the oils from your hands from getting into these coppers and actually speeding up that oxidation process. So I try not to do that as much as I can, but honestly, it's difficult not to in this situation, because being a 12 gauge cable, this is going to have to fit into this little hole up here that is begging for something a little smaller. And what you do not want to do, again, we're using two hands, let's see, is going to be a tight fit. So you have to be quite accurate and methodical. And again, this is not very easy in the dark. And if you hit the sides, you'll notice several wires peeling back like that. It's not good to have stray strands sticking out anywhere, because that will be a introduce risk for a short, which you do not want. So once you get those as tight as you can without putting too much oil on them, find your hole, put some hair around it, and hope that you can do it right. Pull this all the way down so it opens up completely, and even then I'm having some difficult time. So these are the types of things that I like to avoid. And so I'm at the point now, much like rubber surrounds so they don't rot, I'm almost always looking for speakers and amps that have a binding post that I can just one-handedly reach back in there and plug it in, rather than fiddle with this. All right, now I've got it in there clean with much deliberation. There's our upgrade. Thank you for watching. I'm going to test these now and see if we've made any smoothness improvements. Talk to you soon. Thanks for watching Hobby Hi-Fi.